Today, I want to help you guys get over your fears of using a sketchbook. I had a huge fear of using my own sketchbook for the longest time, and I just want to talk about it a little bit and share some tips and advice that I think will help you overcome this problem that I know pretty much every artist faces at some point or another. And this video is actually a follow-up video to a video that I made previously about why sketchbooks are so hard to use. And if you haven't seen that, in that I'm basically kind of expressing how dumb and stupid I feel for not being able to use a sketchbook when it's such a simple concept and it's supposed to be for fun. But for some reason, I kind of fell into this rut of feeling so horrible and bad because I wasn't able to get myself to use a sketchbook. And it was hard because I would see other artists use their sketchbooks and it seemed like it was so easy and I could see them improve, but why couldn't I take that step and make my own sketchbook drawings? Like it just didn't make sense. It didn't add up for me. I worked through that problem by making that video. I was able to confront a lot of the fears that I had and problems I had with the sketchbook. And now going forward, I feel like I'm learning so much about myself and just how to just draw again like I used to. The three things that I want to talk about today are perfectionism, purpose, and Pinterest/tools. I gotta do the alliteration with 3 P's, right? So with perfectionism, we are our own worst enemies. I think a lot of artists struggle with perfectionism because we are so detail-oriented that we kind of forget to have sympathy on ourselves. And I think this starts from a young age. You are an artist and you're trying to make what you see in your head real on paper so other people can see it. Back in the caveman times, cavemen would draw on the cave so they could share stories and share experiences with other people. And so you can see where this kind of deep, innate desire to share and express ourselves comes from as artists. And I think the biggest thing that we deal with as a perfectionist is comparison. That includes social media. That comparing yourself to other people is horrible because it just robs yourself of all the joy that you would have had. The saying being that comparison is the thief of all joy. It is pretty accurate, and I've experienced that a lot, and I think you have as well. And I think it all just draws from a subjective standpoint of your expectations for yourself and not meeting your own expectations, which is kind of crazy, right? Usually it's external expectations, but we kind of do it on ourselves a lot. And when you include comparing yourself to another person, it's almost like you have this internal fear of being compared to them, that you're not as good as so-and-so, and it just prevents you from doing artwork. And I think that's really sad because us as artists, we realize that we aren't perfect, but for some reason we hold ourselves to this standard to try to be the best that we can be, which is good, but it's also counterproductive entirely, if that makes sense. And it's sad because there are so many sketches and so much artwork that you could be making if you could get over this hurdle of being a perfectionist. And it just lays outside of that door that we put up in front of ourselves saying, oh, well, if it's not as good as I see it in my head and it doesn't turn out as good as I think it should, then I will just close my sketchbook and leave it and abandon it, right? And that is so sad because the only way to get better is to just keep drawing, so you're kind of self-sabotaging yourself. And if you enjoyed making art as a kid, why don't you enjoy making art now? I think that's probably a really good place to start, and that's something that I asked myself, and I actually mentioned it in the previous video about how kids just don't really care what they make, they're just making it for fun. And when you involve money and being professional, then things get sort of convoluted and very messy really quickly, and you start to lose what your purpose actually was as an artist. And a really important point to remember here is a quote that is from somewhere that I cannot remember, but I hear it all the time, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So if this isn't working for you, if being a perfectionist and being hard on yourself or being fearful of something and never doing anything about it, and you're expecting something else to happen, that you're expecting someday just something's going to click and you're just going to start being better and you're going to get over your fear of sketchbook, I don't think that's quite going to happen. Maybe let today be the day that you overcome that fear, because you have to start somewhere, because you can't just do the same thing over and over again and expect something different to happen. You have to do something different. So that's what I did when I created this last video about why sketchbooks are so hard to use. It invited the opportunity to change something about myself that I felt horrible about for a long time. And making that video for me personally was the way that I took the first step in getting over it, was facing the problem head on and trying to overcome it on my own. And again, if you have any suggestions to any of this stuff, I would love to hear it in the comments. Share your experience and your thoughts on this. but a lot of this is subjective. This is just my personal experience with perfectionism and all of the other topics we're going to talk about today. But I just feel like if you're at least aware of some of these things, these main points I'm talking about today, then you're at least halfway there to figuring out the problem, and the last half of the problem is just take the next step to try to solve that in whatever means is reasonable for you, right? Now, purpose is the next theme. I think this is an important one because if you don't have a sense of purpose for why you're using a sketchbook, then it kind of just doesn't make sense to even sketch in it because you don't even know what it's for. And I think simplifying why you're using a sketchbook in the first place makes everything so much simpler and more clear. And again, going back to the comparison, I think for me, when I saw other people sketching in their sketchbooks, like when I went to art school, for instance, and seeing stuff on social media and people sharing sketchbook tours, I got into the mindset of feeling like mine's never going to look that good, or I've tried and mine just doesn't add up to what I'm seeing online. And thus, I would just stop trying and forget about it, because all of the art that I wanted to post was polished. I switched over to digital a few years ago, and I just never really looked back. I did pretty much everything digitally, and everything I posted was a final piece of artwork that was polished and pretty clean. And very rarely would I ever post something that wasn't finished from my iPad Pro. And I think accepting that your purpose as an artist and using a sketchbook isn't to make it aesthetic. A sketchbook is a tool. It is a place to learn and to be free of judgment and just enjoy it. And when you treat your sketchbook as if something you're going to always be posting, it kind of stresses you out. Again, some people can just post their sketches and it's totally fine, but for others, maybe like myself, it feels a little bit more of a burden to feel like every page has to look good because, well, if I can't share it, then what's the point? But a sketchbook is for ourselves, and it should be a place to practice and just enjoy having a space that you don't have to look clean and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think at the end of the day, if you can master being free of your own judgments while sketching your sketchbook, then that's the best, because no one has to look at your sketchbook. You don't have to post any of your artwork to be judged by others, but really it's our own selves that's judging the work in our sketchbook. And I know it's a little too aware of how things are, but I think for some of us that are overthinkers like myself, my own brain would literally get in the way of me drawing. It's like there was two distinct people. The person who wanted to draw and to get better and knew that just drawing would make me get better and I'd have fun. And the other part of me that was so ambitious to have the best quality stuff ever and to aspire to making comic books or making animations or whatever it might be, professional level, that I lost the sense of motivation to just try. And this comes with a give and take, right? You have to be free of your own judgments so you could freely draw and have fun and not worry about what it looks like, but also you want to practice and get better, right? So it's kind of hitting that middle ground of not being too judgmental on yourself, that you stop yourself from drawing in the first place, but allowing yourself to be free enough, but not too free that you're being lazy and not improving. But I think just having fun and improving is the best way, because you can't force yourself to get better. You can only let yourself have fun and keep improving because you are drawing more often, and that just naturally happens, and it's not something you have to think about. And lastly is Pinterest and tools. I use Pinterest a lot for references. I think it's important to remember that you can't draw something from nothing, right? You have to have some sort of visual information in your mind to draw something. I think expecting yourself to draw exactly what you see in your mind on paper is absolutely insane. Some people are very good at this right away, or they have practiced and honed the skill to be able to get there. But for a lot of us artists, to expect that of ourselves right out the gate is insane. We are not able to perfectly render something in our mind on paper. Some people are, not me. So what I'm suggesting, and a lot of artists always suggest this as well, is to use reference. You have to grab material from something and filter it through your mind in order to draw it on paper. And by using reference images and drawing all of different things, it'll start to create a visual reference book in your mind that you can draw upon. Hey, I learned how to draw a camera. I can only think of a camera because I'm looking at one right now. But I learned to draw a camera. And so later on, I'm able to draw cameras now. Oh, what else is kind of like a camera? A robot. You can see where this is going, right? Like, it just builds on itself. So you have to build that visual reference sheet in your mind of things. It's just how it is. And I think Pinterest is a great tool and resource for this because it is full of so much great art, and you can just make Pinterest boards, reference boards for any specific project. Me, for instance, I actually go to a board called Art Styles I Love, and it's just full of inspirational artwork that I just adore for one reason or another, and I can feel like I can go to that anytime that I'm feeling a little less creative or have art block or something, and I can draw upon one image to draw from, look at similar artworks from that, and it just kind of dominoes from there. And eventually, after looking at some reference images for a while, I'm able to kind of go out my own and feel like, oh, I kind of want to like try drawing other things, you know, on my own from memory or from just like my imagination. And all of that stuff from my imagination is built on things that I've seen in real life. And allowing yourself to draw and copy these reference images in your sketchbook is really good because it commits it to memory and puts it in that visual reference book. Whether that be a real picture that you're looking at for photo reference or some other artist's work to try to mimic their style, or how do they draw eyes, heads, anything. And usually my favorite way to draw is to kind of set the mood. I like to make sure that my space is clean, because if it's messy, it's just hard for me to focus. I'm a little bit more self-aware and self-conscious that way, that I know if my place is messy, then my mind is messy, if that makes sense. And so for me, I need to have a clean place to kind of sketch and doodle. I need to be comfortable, whether that means I'm sitting at my desk, I'm laying in bed, or I'm laying on the couch. Sometimes those are the most comfortable places for me to be able to draw and feel the most inspired. I love to put on some music or a good TV show or movie on in the background. A lot of times movies and TV shows that I've already seen, so that way I don't have to pay attention to it too hard, but it's enough to have something fun in the background to keep me feeling like I'm entertained. I feel kind of like an iPad kid as I say this, a little too much stimulation, but I feel like it does help, honestly. But to each their own. Whatever you find most comfy and relaxing, I would do that, because that helps you be able to draw and sketch a lot easier. Because I think drawing draws upon your relaxation and your comfortability. If you're not comfortable or if you're stressed, drawing usually doesn't come as easy or naturally as it does when you're relaxed. And I think creativity is allowing yourself to be calm and relaxed and letting ideas flow. Because if your mind's stressed up like a ball, it can't be flexible enough to be creative, if that makes sense. And if Pinterest doesn't work for you, there are art of books, there's the library. I mean, heck, even go to Panera Bread and just sit there and draw people. You might look like a stalker, but if it gets you to draw, whatever. And I think next, this is the most significant thing that changed and altered my brain chemistry when I was trying to draw in my sketchbook. It was simply the tools that I was using. Again, this could range from your sketchbook that you're using, the pencils, whatever it may be. But for me, the first thing that I realized was my pencils. It wasn't working properly for me. I tried drawing with some like lead pencils and stuff, things that are a lot more thinner, and it just wasn't making sense to me. It wasn't feeling comfortable. I didn't feel right about it. And then I kind of remembered what I do when I do digital art. I usually make sure that my brush that I'm using for sketching or for drawing in general is usually a little bit thicker of a brush setting. So that way I'm not focused on all the minute details, and I'm just drawing the broad, bigger strokes of everything before I get into the nitty-gritty details. I learned this in art school, and I realized that consciously I'd forgotten that I did that while drawing digitally. And when I drew physically in a sketchbook, I needed to also take those same principles and apply it to this situation. So I grabbed some of my old art school supplies, and I used a thicker lead or graphite pencil, and it worked really well. All of a sudden, I felt more comfortable. Drawing didn't feel as cumbersome, and it felt like it was just simpler. It was like drawing with a crayon. It just felt good. It felt right. And so for me personally, I realized that I needed a thicker pencil. And I didn't want one that smudged a lot, because after using the graphite pencil, I realized that that was really messy in my sketchbook and made my hands dirty, and I just wanted something better. So I looked on Amazon, and I found these amazing pencils. I actually got 3 of them, and they are like pencil crayons, I guess you could call them. They are kind of like a soft colored pencil texture, a little bit waxy, so that way they don't smudge on the paper when you touch them, and they don't leave any residue in your fingers. And I think overall I really like these. Plus they have a bunch of different leads, some colored ones. So I just filled the 3 of them that came in the pack, and I filled them with different colors. And so for me, I experimented a lot, and I realized that I really like drawing in the color blue, and so that's just kind of what stuck. And I have the other pencil colors there if I want to switch around, or if I want to color a sketch in different colors. So it's just versatile and really, really fun. And it changed the game immediately. As soon as I changed what tool I was using, it helped so much. A lot of times, especially in the film industry with video cameras and lenses and all that equipment stuff, they will tell you that equipment doesn't matter, but it does when it limits you from feeling comfortable in making something. And so for me, changing my pencils was the exact change I needed, and it kickstarted everything for me. So the moral of this story is that you just need to experiment, try something different. If you're not feeling comfortable with something, switch it up, draw with a thinner pencil, a thicker pencil, draw on a different sketchbook, draw just on copier paper. If you're not feeling comfortable drawing in anything, any shape or form, just change it up and see if there's a difference. I did for myself, and I mean, it worked. Those three are the biggest points that got me out of being afraid of using my sketchbook, and I feel like I'm able to kind of face this fear that I feel like I still kind of have, and I'm still trying to work through. And just remember that fear is going to stop you from being something that you're fully capable of doing. For instance, imagine that there is a plank of wood that you have to walk across, and someone just set it out on the floor, and they ask you to walk across it. But it's super easy. Just walk straight across it, not a problem. There's no danger, there's nothing involved. But as soon as you take that same plank of wood and that same action, maybe like 10 stories up in the air, gaping the gap between two cliff sides, all of a sudden, walking across that plank feels a lot different. There's a lot more fear, there's a reaction, you start sweating, you're scared, but it's the same thing. If you were just as confident doing it on the ground, why is all of a sudden the change of scenery scarier? And all of a sudden, you're shaking, you're clumsy, and you're not as confident. And I know that's a pretty extreme analogy. It's not the most perfect analogy for this situation, but I just wanted to drive the point that being scared of something is a good thing, but learning to be able to handle that fear and move forward without shaking will prevent you from injuring yourself, if that makes sense. So when it comes to sketchbooks, face the fear and just try doing it. Because you have to trust in yourself to make good artwork. Make yourself comfortable while doing it, and I promise that it will work and it'll start to click. It's not going to be an overnight thing, and it's not going to be something that happens all in one night. But for me, it happened slowly, and now I'm a lot more comfortable drawing my sketchbook. And for me, it's actually become a source of happiness, and I actually found myself wanting to draw in a sketchbook for the first time in forever, and just wanting to just draw things. And I think that's the most amazing improvement ever. And I hope that you use your sketchbook to have fun and just do it for kicks and giggles. And again, I'm not the best artist in the world, and I do not have any of this stuff figured out. This is just my experience, and I'm hoping to add to the conversation that other artists are having online with dealing with the sketchbook, because it's something that I haven't seen a lot of videos about. People share their sketchbooks that look really aesthetic. They do sketchbook sessions, but I feel like they don't quite talk about the mental trauma that goes on internally trying to get to the point where you're drawing in a sketchbook. And so I hope that this helps in any way, shape, or form. And if it did, please share it with another artist friend. I love you guys. I believe in you. And like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.